The amount of money you can make doing this is absolutely insane. Like, this was the shocker of this whole video for me. From the busker, to the university guitar instructor, to the guy playing sold out arenas. You ever wonder how much they're getting paid? I did, so I used my resources to figure out how much guitar players actually make. Now, a couple notes before we get to it, and I share with you guys this coveted information. First of all, everything is in US dollars, and I've adjusted for inflation when necessary. It's also worth noting that there are outliers, there is variance, and while everybody I've used as a resource here is a direct source who I would consider reliable, there's a price range. It's not a one price fits all type situation. Anyways, let's get to it. Now, the first thing I think of when I think of the paid guitar player is the guy who's hired to play live, and the pay spectrum here is huge as there are so many different types of gigs. The least I've ever been paid was with a New Orleans style big jazz band, and that paid $15 for an entire night of music. On a good night, the tips would bring that up to about $40 and all the drinks that we wanted. This was a bit of an unordinary situation, something that it paid so low I probably wouldn't have gone far out of my way to do it, but it was down the street from where I live. There were no rehearsals. I'd get the call a few hours before the gig even started, and if I was free, I would just show up and read tunes out of a book for the night. A more typical gig, like playing in a cover band in a bar, wedding, or rodeo or something like that, would pay on the low end $100, on the high end $200 for 3 full sets of music, and this is a rate that I found pretty steady no matter where I've lived. However, in certain places there are different opportunities that arise. In LA, a weekday gig is paying $150 to $300, but on the weekends, if you take a corporate gig, that's where the real money is. Think somebody's wedding in Malibu, a business Christmas party, that kind of thing. And for those shows, you're going to be pocketing $400 to $800 a night. Now, weddings can be a bit of a cash cow. People are willing to spend money on a big event. I've done a number of these, and what I would do is play finger-style acoustic stuff during the time when everybody was showing up, and then play whatever the bride wanted to walk down the aisle to. Usually this was an hour and a half of work, and I would charge $300 for this. And if you really focus on this kind of thing and live in a place where people have some money to spend, it can be even more lucrative. I know a guy who charges $3,500 to play fingerstyle acoustic stuff at a wedding. He knows every single pop and love song under the sun, and living in a place like California where there are weddings year round, he does quite well for himself. Different cities will have different opportunities. In New York, if you're a somewhat established jazz guy, you can expect to earn between $150 to $300 as a sideman. However, if you're on Broadway playing in one of the pit bands, then you're looking at $250 to $500 a night, which also has the major bonus of being a consistent gig. Or say you're down in Nashville playing country covers on the Broadway strip. I have a buddy who used to do this, and he got paid $50 to $75 plus tips for 4 sets of music. However, I have heard that some places are now paying only in tips. However, I have yet to confirm that. And I will say, if you have any firsthand information about any of this stuff, or if you think that I'm off with any of these numbers, please feel free to let me know down in the comment section. Now, later on in this video, we're going to talk about how online guitar players like myself make money, but a big part of that is Patreon and the Patreon producers who make videos like this one possible. Patreon is an online tip jar of sorts, and through it I offer a number of rewards, like early access to the videos I make, tabs to the stuff I play, and things like that. Through Patreon, creators like myself are able to have about the only steady source of income that you can have doing this job, and it allows me to put out videos like this one without having to worry too much about the ups and downs of the roller coaster that is YouTube. Memberships start at $2 a month, and even that goes a long way and means the world to me. You can find more at patreon.com/samuraiguitarist. I'll also put up links in the description. Anyways, let's get back to it. All right, so moving on to a step up from the local gigger would be the guitar player playing with a touring artist doing mid-level venues like theaters. Think venues that have 1,000 seats or so. For this level, the hired hand is usually being paid around $300 for a show day, $150 for a travel day, and then rehearsal days would pay somewhere in between there. On top of that, there's usually a per diem that's provided, which is kind of like an allowance that you use on food and stuff. As well, you might get a few extra bucks if the venue isn't able to provide you with catering. There are also different types of contracts. Sometimes a guitarist might negotiate a flat week fee or a flat fee for the tour. Other times, if you're especially lucky, you might get put on a retainer, which means you're just kind of like a full-time employee with a salary. The next level up from here is the big gig. This is when you're playing with a major recording artist, doing arenas, stadiums, festivals, that kind of thing. And for this, you're getting paid between $450 to $600 per show. The wild card here being a TV performance, in which case you might get paid $0, but you also might get up to $1,000 for it. And honestly, this is a fair bit lower than I thought it would be. With this video, I'm thinking of the guy who would go into a career in music, trying to become a session guitar player and seeing how far that they can take that. And considering like this is the pinnacle, these gigs are hard to come by. It's realistic to think you have a chance of getting them. I know a number of people who work these kind of jobs, but considering this is the peak of the mountain, it's not a lot of money, all things considered. But of course, it's cool, fun, it's desirable. If one guy's not going to take the gig, there's 100 people lined up to take his position, and this kind of economy always favors the employer. And it's also worth mentioning with these bigger touring acts is the consistency. Being able to rely on a steady income is so much easier than trying to hustle up gigs month to month to pay the bills. And sure, there's a step up from this. If you're Paul McCartney's guitar player who's been with him for like 20 years, you're going to be able to command a different wage. If one of these top level artists wants specifically you and you have a long history with them, you're going to be able to bargain differently. But these types of gigs are needle in a haystack, win the lottery type of thing, which isn't realistic for most of us. And one more thing that I want to mention with these touring guys is there are some ways to increase your wage. If you're providing background vocals, if you're the music director for a band, yeah, you're going to see a pay increase. And if you're the member of the band, the guitar player for Greta Van Fleet is making a whole lot more money per show than some pop star's guitar player. But here, you're no longer the employee. You're invested in the business, and this is a whole other world. But there's also other ways of making money performing besides gigging. Busking, for example. I went busking once when I was living in Brisbane. I didn't have the proper equipment. I just got my acoustic guitar and strummed it as loud as I possibly could in a crowded place. I made $20 per hour before I was asked to leave because I didn't have a license either. The amount of money you can make as a professional busker is absolutely insane. Like, this was the shocker of the whole video for me. If you're set up in a good spot with an appealing shtick, you can make up to $1,000 a day. So this would be like a warm, sunny, touristy, crowded location. You're doing something that hooks people in, putting in 8 hours, and you got the proper sound system and everything. And man, if I didn't hear this straight from the source, I'm not sure I would have believed it. I'm certain not every busker makes this kind of money, and it's not something I think you could necessarily do every day, but I would never have guessed that the high range of busking is making you more money than being Katy Perry's guitar player. Another road that a number of guitar players will go down, something that I considered in my youth, was playing on cruise ships. It's so appealing because it's a steady gig and it's something that is almost always available. Starting salaries for this are $2,000 to $3,000 a month, depending on what you're doing. Are you a member of a jazz ensemble playing in the lounge, or are you a solo performer playing by the pool? There's a lot of different jobs for musicians on cruise ships. The longer you do this and the more responsibilities you take on, the more money you can make. I had one buddy who'd been doing this for a while and was doing a lot of things, and he was making $4,400 per month, which may not seem like a ton of money, but when you're on a cruise ship for 4 to 6 months of the year, you don't have a lot of living expenses, your accommodation and food are taken care of, then you can pocket a good chunk of this change. Let's move on from the performance-based jobs to the studio musician. This is a guy who's hired to record stuff, and there's certainly not nearly as much work here as there used to be. The rates here are all over the map. The ground floor is $0 per hour, where you're just doing it as a favor because you like the guy or you like the music. A mid-level pro, $100 per hour. A top-level LA guy with a heavy resume, then you're looking at $200 an hour. Some projects pay per song. I know an established guy in Nashville, and he said it's usually $100 to $500 per tune. Now, if you're a proper famous rock star level guitar type guy, think Joe Satriani, Tom Morello / level, then this rate can be absolutely astronomical. I know someone who used one of these guys on one of their projects, and his rate was $30,000 per day, and apparently that was the guitar player doing this guy a favor because he wanted to be part of the project. But this is not going to be feasible for most of us, but that's where the cap is. The other thing worth noting that can affect your session rate is whether or not you're a member of the musicians union. Pretty much everyone I've talked to and the people that I would consider my peers aren't members of the union. It does pay more, but typically you're only using union workers if you're doing film, TV, or video game type stuff. Moving on from the session guitarist is the world of teaching guitar, and again, this also has a wide range. When I first started teaching, it was out of a music school. I was making $15 an hour teaching predominantly beginners and kids. It was glorified babysitting, if I'm being honest, but I came back to that same job after college and I was getting $18.50 $50 an hour, and that was because I had a college degree. When I would do this outside of the school, I would charge $40 per hour, and this is a pretty standard and fair rate for a good local teacher. If you start getting some recognition or people are actively seeking you out, of course you can ask for more. I was still doing one-on-one Skype lessons well into my YouTube days, and I think when I stopped, my rate was $100 an hour. The next level of teaching is the university level, and I was actually able to get some exact figures from universities and colleges across Canada. For a full-time guitar instructor, you're looking at $50,000 to $60,000 in salary. And it's also worth noting for this that there are benefits and consistency that you won't find in many other jobs. If you're an instructor at Berkeley, from what I can tell that's available online, the lowest salary is $21,000, and I'm guessing that's like an office assistant kind of thing, and it goes up to $180,000, and I'm guessing that's like the dean, department head, or maybe a marquee professor kind of thing. One source I found said an associate professor makes $70,000, a full professor can make $100,000. I don't have a direct source here, I'm just going off what I was able to find online. And now let's talk about something that kind of applies to all guitar players: endorsement deals. For a typical guitar player, and again, I'm not talking about a Slash type who has signature everythings, endorsement deals typically mean free stuff or stuff that's heavily discounted. I know I've never had anybody pay me to play any of their gear, and I'm not sure that I know anyone who has. If you're able to do something like a signature instrument, typically you're going to see about 6% of what the company sells your gear for. But this is not something that most pros can achieve unless they start building a fan base on their own. And even then, it's not going to be a massive source of income for most. Which brings me to my final category: making money online as a internet guitar content creator type. This is something that, believe it or not, I know a fair bit about. Let's say you have a reach of 50,000 people in all your social medias, and I use this number because I think it's a hard but attainable target for someone who puts in a good, concerted effort over an extended period of time. I was able to get to this number over about 2 years of full-time hours. And this was also the point where I started making proper money through YouTube, so I do have the real numbers that I can share with you. Sponsored content at this level, and that's, this video is brought to you by whoever. That would pay me $500 at this level, and it definitely wasn't an ordinary thing, but they did come in occasionally. Now, if you're a trusted gear review guy with a specific devout kind of audience, you could definitely command more, but this was never anything that I did. It was always the online services and that kind of thing. I've still got all the numbers from back then. My AdSense, which was what YouTube pays me to put ads on my videos, that was paying about $500 per month. My Patreon was at $300 per month. But I also had a few other little things that were directly tied into YouTube. Stuff like affiliate linking, that was a $100 check every couple months. And I also back then would upload my music to Spotify and a bunch of other streaming services, and usually that would pay $30 or so a month. On top of that, I was leveraging YouTube to do some other stuff off the platform. So I was doing a lot of Fiverr guitar gigs, which is an online marketplace where people can hire you for a digital service. And it looks like on the high end, I was bringing in $500 a month doing that. On a low end, $80. And that was really dependent on what kind of time and effort I was putting into it. I also mentioned that I was doing a number of one-on-one Skype lessons that I would advertise on my YouTube channel. And it looks like that was good for about $750 a month. So all in all, on a good month, $3,000 or so would be what I expected to bring in when I was around that level. Different audiences and different creators can monetize things differently, but that's what it looked like from my end. So there you have it. I hope that paints a picture of what you could expect to make as a professional guitar player in this day and age. You're certainly not getting rich from it. Unless you're a busker, apparently. Did not see that one coming. But we haven't discussed songwriting credits, royalties for things you've contributed to, getting percentages of merch sales, being financially tied into the end product. That's a completely different world. It can be an absolute goldmine, but it can also be a bust. It's totally unpredictable. Ultimately though, and this is something you'll hear over and over again, this should not be a job that you get into for the money, even though there are ways to carve paths out for yourself. It can be tough, and financial security in the arts can certainly be a challenge, but there are also deeply rewarding things about doing music full-time that keep people like us pursuing it our entire lives. And I think I'll wrap up this video by telling you about a conversation that I had with one of the guys who's a professional guitar player that I use as a resource for this video. Him and I got to talking about why he does what he does. And he told me, "Old Sammy G, I'm clearly not getting rich. I could put these same hours somewhere else and make so much more money. There are some nights where I'm playing music that I don't particularly love to an audience that's uninterested, 1,000 kilometers away from my wife and home, and I wonder, what am I doing? But I remind myself, I got to the point that few others did. I get paid to spend time with the thing I love most in the world, music. And when it's good, there's not a whole lot else that's better. And when it's bad, it's still better than a lot of things. And he went on to say, all I want in life is to pursue this thing I love. And to me, that is significantly more valuable than money. And I think that sentiment is shared by a lot of us. And I think people like my buddy are kind of underappreciated by society. He's not out there saving lives, sure. But you take for granted how much color people like him bring to the world. There you have it, my friends. That is how much professional guitar players actually make. If you enjoyed this video, if you find this kind of content useful, or if you just like to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a Patreon producer over at patreon.com/samuraiguitarist. I'll also put up links in the description. Thank you all for watching. If you want to check out some of that sweet, sweet Sammy G merch, we got a new merch design over there. This one's requested by you. This is the Samurai Dad Amplifier shirt. You can find that at shopsamuraiguitarist.com. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell, and stay tuned for a wide range of music-related content. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I'll see you again soon.